Alright, so this is a key to part 6 of section 1.5. Alright, now you want to solve each equation by factoring. Alright, so nothing else. Don't use any other type of method to solve these quadratic equations. It has to be by factoring. Now remember, a quadratic equation has the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, and this is general form. Your textbook uses the word general form, so that's in general form. Okay, now when solving all of these, you want to make sure before you factor that is in general form. So you have all the terms on one side, 0 on the other side. So number 1, you have this in general form. So we're going to go and we're going to factor. Now remember, one of the things you look for when you factor any polynomial is the GCF. So if you look at these 4 terms, the GCF is 1. So we can't factor out anything other than a 1. So I'm going to go directly to the 2 binomials. So when you're going to factor these, you're going to factor as 2 binomials. So these are all trinomials that you're going to end up with. Okay, so use the idea of FOIL to help you with this. So I want a 3x squared. So what term times another term will be 3x squared. So what 2 factors multiplied together will be 3x squared. The only possibility is 3x and x. So I'm going to put 3x here, I'm going to put x here. All right, now 4, there are 2 possibilities. There's 4 times 1, 2 times 2. And so what's going to work here will be 2 and 2. So I'm going to put the 2 here, 2 here. It does not matter where you put the 2, they're the same. Now keep in mind that the last sign's positive, so that means that these 2 signs in here have to be the same. A negative times a negative is a positive. So look, negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. Or a positive 2 times a positive 2 is a positive 4. The one you're going to need is going to be the middle sign. So I need this to be a positive 8x. So in order to get a positive 8x, both of these have to be plus signs. Okay? So I factored this correctly. You can always check yourself. You FOIL this out. 3x times x is 3x squared. If you look at the last term, positive 2 times positive 2 is a positive 4. Now let's look at the 8x. 3x times 2 is 6x. 2 times 2 is 2x, so 6x plus 2x is 8x. All right, now once you factor, you're going to use what's called the zero factor property. All right, so when using the zero factor property, you're going to set each of these factors equal to 0. So remember, zero factor property says that if you have 2 or more factors whose product is 0, 2 or more factors whose product is 0, then one of these has to be 0, either a equals 0 or b equals 0. Alright, so you're going to say each one equal to 0. Okay, because either one of those factors can be 0. 0 times this is 0. This times 0 is 0. Okay, so I'm going to say each one equal to 0, so I get 3x plus 2 equals 0, and then x plus 2 equals 0. And then notice I went from a quadratic equation to 2 linear equations. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, combine like terms, so I get 3x equal to negative 2. And then to get the x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and then simplify, so x equal a negative 2/3. So that's one of my solutions. And the other one, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, combine like terms, I get x to be a negative 2. So your 2 solutions are negative 2/3 and negative 2. All right, number 2 is not in general form, so let's bring the 5 over. So I'm going to get 2x squared minus 9x minus 5 equals 0. And again, make sure it's in descending order. So from largest exponent to your constant should be listed last. Okay, the GCF is 1. The only common factor that 2x squared, negative 9x, and negative 5 have in common is a 1. So I'm going to go directly to the 2 binomials, just like this. So find 2 factors whose product is this. The only possibility for 2x squared is 2x and x. And the only possibility for 5, forget about the negative 5 right now, but for 5 is 5 and 1. So I'm going to put the 5 here and the 1 there. That's the one that's going to work. The last sign is negative. The only way you can get a negative is if one is positive, one is negative. All right, and to help you with this, always remember, always look at your middle sign. I need that middle sign to be a negative. So if you look at this, this is 10x right here. If you look at the outer, that's 10x. 2x times 5 is 10x, and the inner is 1 times x is 1x. So that 10x has to be this middle sign. So I'm going to put a negative right here, and then this has to be a plus symbol. And check. 2x times negative 5 is a negative 10x. 1 times x is x. A negative 10x and a positive 1x is a negative 9x. Alright, so you factor this correctly. Now once you factor, you're going to use the zero factor property. So you're going to set each of these factors equal to 0. So I get 2x plus 1 equals 0, x minus 5 equals 0. And so notice I went from a quadratic equation to 2 linear. So I'm going to subtract 1 from here, from this side, from each side. Combine like terms, I get 2x equal negative 1. Divide both sides by 2, and I get x to be a negative 1/2. So that's one of your solutions. Over here, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. Combine like terms, I get x to be 5. So your two solutions are negative 1/2 and 5. Alright, over here, this is already in general form. The GCF for x squared, 12x, and 36 is just 1. So I'm going directly to the two binomials. And don't forget to put a 0 here. You got to say equals 0, you have to say equals 0, and you have to say equals 0. So make sure you say equals 0. Because in order to use the zero factor property, you have to have a 0 here. So say it. That's how you have to write it mathematically. Alright, now when I factor this, you're going to notice something. The only possibility for x squared is x times x. And for 36, there are several possibilities. There's 36 times 1, there is 6 times 6, there's 2 times 18, there's 3 times 12, and so on. There's 4 times 9. So there's multiple possibilities with 36. But look at the middle term. That you want that to be a 12x. So the only possible way that can happen is if both of these are 6's. Because look, x times 6 is 6x. 6 times x is 6x. 6x plus 6x is 12x. Alright? And so the last sign is positive, so it means these signs have to be the same, and there has to be that middle sign. So both of these can be plus symbols. And what you're going to notice is that these two factors are the same thing. So the next step, remember, would be to use the zero factor property. Set each factor equal to 0. But since it's the same factor, just set one of them equal to 0. So we get x plus 6 equals 0. Subtract 6, and so I get x equal to negative 6. So the only solution, the only distinct solution I get is a negative 6. Now one of the things you're going to learn in a future lesson is that this negative 6 is called a double root. You don't have to know that for this. A double root, because negative 6 occurred twice. Now in terms of graphing, one of the things it tells you that it's just going to be one x-intercept. That's what it's going to mean when we get to that point. All right, but just list it once. Don't list it twice, because you're only listing in all these. You're only listing your distinct solutions. It's only listed once. All right, so that's going to take care of this worksheet.